The Lysera embassy glittered like a jewel against the cold vacuum of space. Its crystalline windows reflected the muted light of distant stars, while inside, the diplomatic reception hummed with the voices of a dozen species. The orbital station Meridian 9 housed many such embassies, but none quite as prestigious or as beautiful as this one. Marcus Hale adjusted his formal attire, a traditional human suit modified with the subtle golden piping that denoted his status as Earth's lead negotiator. His daughter, Lena, fidgeted beside him in her own ceremonial dress, a miniature version of the formal diplomatic uniform worn by junior attachés. "Stop fidgeting," Marcus whispered, leaning down to Lena's level. At 10 years old, she was all curiosity and nervous energy. "Remember what we discussed. This is important." "I know, Dad," Lena replied, rolling her eyes with the universal exasperation of children everywhere. "Observe everything, speak only when spoken to, and remember that I represent humanity." She recited the familiar words with practiced ease. Marcus smiled. His daughter had been accompanying him to diplomatic functions since she was 7, part of Earth's initiative to normalize family presence in interstellar relations. The humans believed that showing their children to potential allies and enemies demonstrated both vulnerability and strength. It said, "This is what we protect. This is why we negotiate rather than fight." Most species had come to accept, if not entirely understand, the practice. Across the room, Ambassador Arath Vel of the Zephyrian Confederation stood rigidly at attention. Unlike the relaxed postures of the humans and the fluid movements of the gaseous Etheri delegates, the Zephyrians maintained perfect composure at all times. Their crystalline exoskeletons refracted light in dazzling patterns, and their movements were precisely calculated to convey optimal respect according to their intricate social hierarchies. "Negotiations begin in earnest tomorrow," Marcus explained to Lena, nodding toward Vel. "The Zephyrians control 3 key transit corridors we need access to if Earth is going to expand its influence in the Outer Rim. They're notoriously disciplined. Some say cold." "They look like they're made of diamonds," Lena whispered. "Close. Silicon-carbon matrix," Marcus corrected gently. "And they consider children to be unfinished beings. They keep their own offspring in educational creches until they're fully matured." "That sounds boring," Lena declared with the conviction of youth. Marcus suppressed a smile. "Perhaps, but remember, we respect their customs as we expect them to respect ours." A chime sounded, signaling the beginning of the ceremonial toast that would officially open the negotiations. Delegates moved into position, creating a loose circle around the central dais where a Lysaran official, tentacles gracefully extended, presided over crystal flutes filled with various compatible substances. Security Chief Lana Reynolds positioned herself near the exit, hands clasped behind her back in the formal posture of alert readiness. Her eyes scanned the room continuously, pausing momentarily on Lena before continuing their circuit. To anyone watching, she appeared to be simply doing her job. Only Marcus knew that she was part of a much larger safety net, one that had been meticulously constructed around his daughter. As the Lysaran began the ancient ceremonial words that would usher in a week of diplomatic relations, Lena's attention wandered. Marcus felt her small hand slip from his as she drifted slightly to the right, drawn to a display case containing a delicate Zephyrian artifact. It resembled a spiral of frozen music, each crystalline point representing a note in their complex harmonic language. Marcus started to call her back, but the ceremonial silence required at this moment prevented him. He watched, a small knot of worry forming in his stomach, as Lena leaned closer to the display case. She wasn't touching it, merely examining it with the natural curiosity of a child. What happened next occurred with such swiftness that later accounts would differ on the exact sequence. Ambassador Vel, positioned near the artifact, noticed Lena's proximity. Without warning or hesitation, the Zephyrian ambassador moved with startling speed. One crystalline appendage swept out and connected with Lena's face with a sharp crack that echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. The force of the blow sent Lena stumbling backward, a small cry escaping her lips as she fell to the polished floor. A thin line of red appeared on her cheek, where the silicon-carbon edge had cut her skin. The room froze in that terrible moment of shock that precedes chaos. Marcus lunged forward, but Security Chief Reynolds was faster. Her hand went immediately to her communicator as she moved to place herself between Lena and the Zephyrian. "Code Amber," she said clearly into her comm unit. The words seemed innocuous enough, but their effect was immediate and far-reaching. Throughout the station, hidden protocols activated with silent efficiency. Alert signals flashed across secure networks, triggering responses that had been planned for but never executed. The station's general alarms shifted from their usual cool blue to an urgent red, bathing the embassy in crimson light. Meridian 9's emergency defense systems hummed to life, though no external threat had been detected. Ambassador Vel remained perfectly still, his crystalline form catching and refracting the red emergency lights. "The child approached a sacred artifact," he stated, his translator conveying the words in flat, emotionless tones. "Such disrespect requires correction according to Zephyrian law." Marcus had reached Lena now, gathering her into his arms. The cut on her cheek was superficial, but the shock in her eyes tore at him. "She's a child," he said, his voice trembling with controlled rage. "She was curious. Nothing more. Immaturity is not an excuse for sacrilege," Vel responded. "I have administered the standard correction as would be applied to any unfinished being." Reynolds's voice cut through the tension. "All human personnel, immediate evacuation protocol. Authorization, Reynolds, 7 Alpha." Marcus felt a hand on his shoulder, a junior security officer gesturing toward the exit. "Sir, we need to move now." "What about the other delegates?" Marcus asked, still holding Lena. "Not our concern, sir," the officer replied crisply. "Please proceed to the evacuation point." As Marcus carried Lena toward the exit, the Lizaran official's tentacles waved in confused patterns. "What is happening? This is a minor cultural misunderstanding." But the humans were already moving with practiced precision toward the embassy's exits. Within 90 seconds of Reynolds's Code Amber declaration, every human representative had disappeared from the reception, leaving bewildered delegates and one rigidly unapologetic Zephyrian ambassador. The embassy had emptied of human presence in under 2 minutes. Aboard the station's military command center, Admiral Alexandra "Alex" Parker was reviewing system diagnostics when the alert flashed across her private channel. The message was brief: "Code Amber, Lysara Embassy, L. Hale." Her ex-husband's daughter, her former stepdaughter. Without hesitation, Parker activated her command console. "This is Admiral Parker. Initiate Protocol Guardian. Authorization: Parker 9 Delta." The operations officer's surprise was evident. "Ma'am, Protocol Guardian requires council approval for—" "I'm not asking, Lieutenant," Parker cut him off. "Execute the protocol." Around Meridian 9, hidden sensors detected the subtle shifts in energy signatures that indicated movement. Ships that had maintained position in seemingly random patterns now began precise maneuvers, forming a blockade at the station's main docking ring. The first of these vessels to take position was the UES Vigilant, Parker's flagship, which had been ostensibly conducting routine patrol exercises in the sector. It was soon joined by a squadron of rapid response cruisers, their weapon systems powered but not yet targeted. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Parker stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the formation took shape on the tactical display. "Incoming transmission from Meridian Control," her communications officer announced. "They're demanding to know why we're blockading the station." "Tell them it's a security exercise," Parker replied evenly. "And patch me through to the Family Protection Network." A moment later, her screen filled with faces, some in military uniform, others in civilian attire. They represented parents stationed throughout the sector, many of whom had children aboard Meridian 9 or other diplomatic postings. "A human child has been physically assaulted by a diplomat on Meridian 9, Parker stated without preamble. "The Family Protection Network is now active. Those of you with vessels capable of combat support, proceed to these coordinates. She transmitted a series of position markers that would create a secondary perimeter around the station. What about those of us on the station? Asked a woman in engineering coveralls. Secure your children and proceed to designated safe zones. Parker instructed. We're implementing Terran Accords Article 7. The faces on the screen registered shock, determination, and in some cases, grim satisfaction. Article 7 was rarely invoked, the clause that granted extraordinary protective measures in cases of assault against human minors. Who was the child? Someone asked. Lena Hale, Parker replied, her voice betraying no emotion despite the personal connection. No further questions were asked. Within minutes, the comm officer reported that 37 unregistered vessels were moving into formation alongside the official Earth fleet. Some were simple transport shuttles, others were mining craft retrofitted with defensive capabilities. All were piloted by humans with children to protect. In the Lasara embassy, chaos had erupted in the wake of the human departure. Delegates clustered in confused groups, tentacles and appendages gesturing in the various signs of distress or confusion appropriate to their species. The emergency lights continued to pulse red, and station security had arrived to assess the situation. Ambassador Vell remained at his position, seemingly unconcerned by the disruption. You struck a human child, the Lizaran official stated, tentacles curling in agitation. Do you understand what you've done? I administered appropriate correction to an unfinished being who showed disrespect to a sacred artifact. Vell replied, the human's overreaction is regrettable, but not my concern. A station security officer approached, his expression grave. Ambassador Vell, I've been instructed to inform you that a fleet of human vessels has formed a blockade around the station's docking facilities. They are invoking Terran Accords Article 7. Now, for the first time, Vell's perfect composure faltered. A slight vibration ran through his crystalline form, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the walls. Article 7, that is meant for cases of deliberate harm to human offspring. This was a standard disciplinary measure. The humans don't see it that way. Sir, the security officer replied, they're demanding a formal apology and your immediate resignation as ambassador. Vell's translator emitted a sound that might have been a laugh, though his rigid features showed no expression. Preposterous. I acted within the bounds of Zephyrian custom. Sir, the officer continued, they've been joined by what appears to be a civilian fleet. Scans indicate at least 60 vessels, many with improvised weapon systems. The Lizaran official's tentacles whipped in alarm. Parents, it whispered. They've activated the human parental defense network. Vell's crystalline form stiffened further. If that were possible, connect me to their command vessel. This misunderstanding must be resolved. In a secure transit hub on Meridian 9's residential level, Marcus sat with Lena as a medical technician applied regenerative gel to the cut on her cheek. The private room was filled with other human families, diplomatic staff, and their children who had been quietly gathered from throughout the station. It's already feeling better. Dad, Lena assured him, though her eyes still showed the shock of what had happened. Marcus squeezed her hand. I know, sweetheart. You're being very brave. Security Chief Reynolds entered the room, her expression grim but controlled. Marcus, Admiral Parker has implemented Protocol Guardian. She's requesting to speak with you. Marcus's eyebrows rose in surprise. Alex, but she's been stationed on the far side of the sector for months. Not as far as it seemed, Reynolds replied. The Family Protection Network has been mobilized. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. The network was supposedly a myth. A rumor that human parents with military or technical expertise had created a shadow defense system to protect children in diplomatic service. He'd heard whispers, of course, but had never confirmed its existence. Even during his marriage to Alex, she had never explicitly acknowledged it. Put her through, he said. A moment later, Alexandra Parker's face appeared on the room's communication screen. Her features were as Marcus remembered them, sharp, intelligent, with the determined set to her jaw that had first attracted him to her years ago. Marcus, she said by way of greeting, is Lena all right? I'm fine, Alex, Lena answered before Marcus could, waving at the screen. It's just a small cut. Something in Parker's expression softened momentarily before her professional mask returned. Good. Listen carefully. We have 60 vessels forming a defensive perimeter around Meridian 9. I've invoked Article 7 of the Terran Accords. Marcus inhaled sharply. Alex, that's extreme. This could be resolved through normal diplomatic channels. A diplomat struck a human child in full view of a dozen species. Parker replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. If we don't respond with absolute clarity now, it will happen again. To Lena or to someone else's child. Before Marcus could respond, Reynolds interrupted. Admiral, Ambassador Vell is broadcasting on all channels. He's demanding to speak with the human delegation. Parker's smile was cold. Perfect timing. Put it through to this room. I want Lena to hear this. The screen split. Parker's face on one side and Ambassador Vell's crystalline visage on the other. The Zephyrian's usual perfect poise seemed slightly disturbed, minor imperfections in the symmetry of his posture betraying tension. I wish to address the human delegation regarding the unfortunate misunderstanding at the Lasara embassy. Vell began, his translator rendering his words in precise, measured tones. This is Admiral Alexandra Parker of the United Earth ship Vigilant. Parker responded, You struck a human child, Ambassador Vell. Under Terran Accords, Article 7, this constitutes an act of violence against a protected minor. We demand your immediate resignation and a formal apology. Vell's form shifted slightly. Admiral, you misinterpret the situation. I merely administered standard Zephyrian correction to an unfinished being who showed disrespect to a sacred artifact. In my culture, this is entirely appropriate. And in our culture, Parker replied, her voice like ice, it is entirely appropriate for me to target your embassy with precision weapons in response to an attack on a human child. Marcus winced. Alex! Parker continued as if she hadn't heard him. You have 1 hour to tender your resignation and issue a public apology. Ambassador, after that, we will consider your actions an official act of the Zephyrian Confederation against Earth, with all the consequences that entails. This is diplomatic extremism, Vell protested. You cannot possibly expect the Galactic Council to sanction such a disproportionate response. The screen shifted again, adding a third face to the conversation, a being with a smooth, featureless countenance that seemed to shift subtly as it spoke. Actually, Ambassador Vell, I believe they can. High Counselor Vars. Vell's translator conveyed surprise despite his unchanging features. This is an internal matter between Earth and the Zephyrian Confederation. I'm afraid not. The High Counselor replied. As the senior representative of the Synthesis Collective, Vars held significant influence in the Galactic Council. Article 7 of the Terran Accords was ratified by all Council members, including the Zephyrian Confederation. It clearly states that any physical assault on a human minor by a diplomatic representative constitutes grounds for immediate protective action. The child was approaching a sacred artifact, Vell insisted. Was she touching it? Vars asked. No, but... Was she attempting to damage it? No, but her proximity alone. Then, by the Council's standards, there was no threat requiring physical intervention. Vars concluded, I have reviewed the embassy's security footage. The human child was observing, nothing more. Your response was disproportionate by any species standards except, perhaps, your own. Vell's form vibrated slightly, sending rainbow patterns across the screen. This is unprecedented. You cannot allow the humans to dictate terms through military threat. The humans are not dictating terms, Vars corrected. They are enforcing a provision that your government signed in good faith. The Council recognizes that different species have different approaches to offspring rearing. The humans consider physical discipline of children, especially children not their own, to be abhorrent. This was made explicitly clear during the Accord negotiations. Marcus watched this exchange with growing amazement. He had participated in the drafting of the Terran Accords, but had never imagined Article 7 would be invoked over what might, in a different context, have been considered a cultural misunderstanding. What would you have me do? Vel asked, his translator unable to convey the emotion that his rigid features could not express. Exactly what Admiral Parker has demanded. Vars replied, resign your position and issue a formal apology. The Council will then oversee a review of cross-cultural protocols regarding human children in diplomatic settings to prevent future incidents. Parker's expression remained impassive, but Marcus could see the satisfaction in her eyes. This had been her goal all along, not just Vel's resignation, but a formal review of child protection protocols. After a moment of silence, Vel's translator conveyed his response. I will resign my position effective immediately and issue a formal apology to the human child and her family. The Zephyrian Confederation will, of course, cooperate fully with any council review. A wise decision. Vars acknowledged, High Counselor Vars out. As Vars's image disappeared from the screen, Vel turned his attention to Marcus and Lena. I will transmit a formal apology within the hour. For what it may be worth, I did not intend to cause harm by human standards. In Zephyrian culture, such correction is considered beneficial to unfinished beings. In human culture, Marcus replied, children learn through guidance and explanation, not physical force. Lena meant no disrespect to your artifact. She was curious, as children should be. Vel's form shifted in what might have been the Zephyrian equivalent of a nod. A cultural difference I failed to properly account for. My apologies. His image vanished from the screen. Parker remained, her expression softening as she looked at Lena. How's that cheek doing, kiddo? It's okay, Lena replied, touching the healing cut. The medicine makes it tingle. Good, Parker said with a slight smile. You were very brave today. Did you really have 60 ships out there? Lena asked, eyes wide. 23 official Earth vessels and 37 parent-operated craft. Parker confirmed. The Family Protection Network takes its job seriously. Marcus shook his head in amazement. Alex, I had no idea the network was actually real. I thought it was just a rumor. It was safer that way. Parker replied, we've been building it for years. Parents with access to vessels and relevant skills, coordinated through secure channels. We always hoped we'd never have to activate it. But why? Marcus asked. Earth has official protection protocols for diplomatic personnel. Parker's expression grew serious. Because those protocols treat our children as diplomatic assets, not as children. We needed something that prioritized their safety above politics. She paused. Besides, we're parents. Protecting our young is what we do, across species, across space, across time. Lena looked up at the screen with newfound appreciation. That's pretty cool, Alex. It is. Marcus agreed, his respect for his ex-wife deepening. Thank you. Parker nodded, a brief acknowledgement of something that needed no further words between them. The blockade will remain in place until Vel has departed the station and the Council has begun its review. Reynolds will keep you updated on the security situation. She hesitated. Take care of her, Marcus. Always, he promised as the screen went dark. In the days that followed, Meridian 9 became the center of a diplomatic whirlwind. Vel's formal apology was broadcast throughout Council space, and his replacement, a younger, more flexible Zephyrian named Keth Noor, arrived with explicit instructions to adapt to human cultural norms regarding children. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to ratify amendments to the Universal Diplomatic Protocols, specifically addressing the treatment of offspring across species. High Counselor Vars presided, ensuring that the voices of all council members were heard but making it clear that physical discipline of any species young by diplomatic representatives would no longer be tolerated. Marcus found himself at the center of these negotiations, working closely with Vars to draft language that respected cultural differences while establishing universal protections. Lena, her cheek now fully healed, became something of a celebrity among the diplomatic corps, the human child whose experience had catalyzed a significant evolution in interstellar relations. 2 weeks after the incident, as the formal amendments were being finalized, Marcus received a surprising request. Former Ambassador Vel wished to meet privately with him and Lena. After consultation with Reynolds and Parker, who insisted on monitoring the meeting remotely, Marcus agreed. They met in a small conference room near the human embassy. Vel entered alone, his crystalline form catching the light as he moved with his characteristic precision. But something had changed. The rigid perfection of his posture had softened slightly, as if the immovable certainty that had defined him had been subtly altered. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Vel began, his translator conveying what might have been humility in his tone. Marcus nodded. "Your request was unexpected, but I believe in second chances." "As do I," Vel replied. He turned to Lena, who watched him with cautious interest. "Young human, I have come to offer something more than the formal apology already provided. I wish to explain." Lena glanced at her father, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," she said. Vel moved to the conference table and carefully placed a small crystalline object upon it. It resembled a miniature version of the artifact that had been the catalyst for their conflict. "This is a Zephyrian teaching crystal," he explained. "In my culture, knowledge and discipline are intertwined. When I corrected you at the embassy, I was acting according to deep cultural programming that I had never questioned." "Why did you hit me?" Lena asked directly. "I wasn't touching anything." In Zephyrian society, unfinished beings, children, are kept away from sacred objects until they have completed their educational programming. Vel explained, "Your proximity alone would have been considered deeply disrespectful by my people." My response was automatic, the result of thousands of years of cultural evolution. "But you knew I was human," Lena pointed out. "Don't you learn about other species' rules?" Vel's form shifted in what Marcus had come to recognize as discomfort. "We do. But knowing intellectually is different from reprogramming instinctive responses. I failed in that moment to override my cultural conditioning, and you suffered for it. That failure cost me my position. But more importantly, it made me question assumptions I had never examined." He gestured to the teaching crystal. "This contains the history of Zephyrian child-rearing practices, along with my personal reflections on how they might evolve. I have submitted it to my government as part of the Council's review. I believe it may help prevent future misunderstandings." Marcus studied the former ambassador with new appreciation. "That's a significant step, Ambassador Vel. Not many would be willing to challenge their own cultural foundations so publicly." "Former ambassador," Vel corrected. "And it was necessary. The response to my actions, particularly the mobilization of your family protection network, demonstrated that humans possess a collective will to protect their young that rivals or exceeds our own. This is worthy of respect and understanding." Lena leaned forward, examining the teaching crystal with the same curiosity that had precipitated the crisis. "It's beautiful," she said. "What happens to it now?" "It will be incorporated into the new diplomatic training protocols being established by the Council," Vel explained. "All representatives will study it as part of their preparation for interacting with human families." "Can I touch it?" Lena asked, her hand hovering above the crystal. Vel hesitated only briefly. "Yes, it was created to be shared." As Lena's fingertips gently touched the crystal's surface, it illuminated from within, projecting a series of symbols into the air above the table. "It's responding to you," Vel noted with surprise. "That is unprecedented. Our teaching crystals typically interact only with Zephyrian neural patterns." Marcus watched the interaction with wonder. Perhaps it's responding to her intent rather than her biology. Curiosity transcends species, after all. "Perhaps," Vel agreed. "Or perhaps it is simply that change is possible, even in crystalline structures that appear immutable." 6 months after the incident at the Lacera Embassy, Meridian 9 hosted the inaugural ceremony for the Universal Child Protection Agency. The new organization, staffed by representatives of every council member species, would oversee the implementation of the expanded protection protocols and serve as a resource for cross-cultural education regarding offspring care and development. The ceremony took place in a newly constructed wing of the station, its architecture deliberately incorporating elements from all member species. At its center stood a garden designed specifically for children, with interactive features that could be safely enjoyed by the young of any species. Marcus watched with pride as Lena, now appointed as the first human junior ambassador to the agency, cut the ceremonial ribbon alongside High Counselor Vars. The audience, comprised of diplomats from throughout council space, applauded the gesture. In the front row, Alexandra Parker sat in her formal admiral's uniform, the visible symbol of Earth's commitment to enforcing the new protocols if necessary. Beside her sat Keith Noor, the new Zephyrian ambassador, whose progressive views on interspecies relations had earned him the position after Vel's resignation. A remarkable transformation, noted a voice beside Marcus. He turned to find Lana Reynolds, still serving as security chief, but now also holding a position on the agency's advisory board. From crisis to cooperation in 6 months, Marcus agreed. Not bad for interstellar diplomacy. Not bad for parents, Reynolds corrected with a smile. Never underestimate what can be accomplished when families unite around protecting their children. As the ceremony concluded, Lena made her way back to her father's side, her official junior ambassador badge gleaming against her formal attire. "What did you think?" she asked, practically bouncing with excitement. "You were perfect," Marcus assured her. "How does it feel to be making history?" Lena considered this with the seriousness only a child can bring to such questions. "It feels good to know that other kids will be safer because of what happened, even if it wasn't much fun when it was happening to me." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "That's wisdom beyond your years, kiddo." "Indeed it is," agreed Admiral Parker, joining them. "The ability to transform personal difficulty into universal benefit is rare in adults, let alone children." Lena beamed at the compliment. "Are you staying for the reception, Alex? Dad says there's going to be actual ice cream, shipped all the way from Earth." "I wouldn't miss it," Parker assured her. "Besides, the Vigilant is on station for the next week as part of the security detail for the agency's first official meeting." "And the network?" Marcus asked quietly as Lena was momentarily distracted by a passing Etheri child. Its gaseous form contained in a decorative environmental suit, standing down but never truly inactive. Parker replied, "Some of the parents have even applied for official positions with the new agency. Turns out, the skills required for covert protection translate well to preventative diplomacy." "Who would have thought that a single slap could reshape galactic law?" Marcus mused. Parker's expression grew serious. "It wasn't the slap, Marcus. It was the response, the immediate, unequivocal statement that our children are not acceptable casualties in the pursuit of diplomatic relations." She paused. "And it wasn't just me or the network. It was all of us, including Lena herself, demonstrating that protection can coexist with understanding." As if on cue, they noticed Lena engaged in animated conversation with the young Etheri, their communication facilitated by handheld translators. Despite their profound biological differences, the two children had found common ground in mutual curiosity. "She's going to be a remarkable diplomat someday," Parker observed. "She already is," Marcus replied, "though I'm hoping she'll consider a less eventful career path." Parker laughed. "Good luck with that. She's her father's daughter, always in the middle of things." "And her stepmother's," Marcus added, "never backing down when it matters." They shared a moment of mutual respect. Former spouses united by their shared love for the child who had, however inadvertently, helped forge a new understanding among the stars. Later, as the reception wound down and delegates began to disperse, Marcus found Lena seated in the new children's garden, examining a replica of the Zephyrian artifact that had sparked the crisis. This version, however, was designed specifically for children to interact with, its surfaces responsive to touch and curiosity. "Making friends with it?" Marcus asked, sitting beside her. Lena nodded. Ambassador Noor explained how it works. "It's actually a kind of music player. Each crystal point represents a different harmonic in their language." She ran her fingers gently over the surface, eliciting a series of ethereal tones that hung in the air around them. Beautiful, Marcus commented. He said that in the old days, Zephyrian children weren't allowed to touch these until they were fully grown. Lena continued, but now they're making special ones for children to learn with. She looked up at her father. Because of what happened to me. Marcus nodded. Sometimes it takes a moment of crisis to highlight what needs to change. I'm glad it wasn't for nothing, Lena said, even though it was scary at the time. It was scary for all of us, Marcus admitted, but you showed remarkable bravery and understanding throughout. Lena shrugged. I just did what you always taught me. Try to understand why they were acting the way they did, even when it hurt. Marcus felt a surge of pride. That's the essence of diplomacy right there. Understanding doesn't mean accepting harm, but it does mean seeking the reasons behind actions rather than simply reacting to them. Plus, having 60 ships ready to back you up doesn't hurt, Lena added with a grin. Marcus laughed. No, it certainly doesn't. Though I hope we won't need to deploy the network again anytime soon. Me too, Lena agreed, but it's nice to know it's there. As they sat together in the peaceful garden, surrounded by the tangible results of a crisis transformed into opportunity, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A single moment of cultural misunderstanding had escalated to the brink of conflict before being channeled into a new foundation for cooperation. Children like Lena, curious, resilient, and forgiving, would inherit this foundation and build upon it. The universal protections now enshrined in council law would ensure they could do so safely. Their natural exploration encouraged rather than constrained by adult fears or rigid traditions. The Zephyrian artifact continued to emit its gentle harmonies as Lena experimented with different combinations of tones. In its music, Marcus heard the promise of a future where understanding transcended differences, where protection and connection worked in concert rather than opposition. It was, he decided, a worthy legacy from a moment that could have ended very differently, a testament to the power of preparedness backed by empathy, of strength tempered by wisdom, of family bonds extending beyond blood or species to encompass a shared commitment to nurturing the next generation. As if reading his thoughts, Lena looked up at him and smiled. We did good, didn't we, Dad? Yes, Marcus agreed, returning her smile. We did good. Around them, Meridian 9 continued its eternal orbit, a small point of light and life against the vast darkness of space, a place where, for now at least, the children of a dozen worlds could grow in safety and understanding, their natural curiosity protected as the precious resource it truly was.